Here we have a map down there at the very bottom, a political world map, and we are looking for where Russia is at on that map. Russia is, of course, something you just can't miss. It is by far the largest country in the world in terms of size, and it is also the only country that covers that lies in two continents, both Europe and Asia. And where is Russia? If you haven't already seen it on the map, here you go. There is Russia. Now, go a little animation there for you guys. Here we have a physical map of Russia, and when we look at Russia in terms of its physical regions, you can really break Russia down into 5 key physical regions. So here we go. Here's number 1. We have the Northern European Plain, which lies in the westernmost part of Russia. We have the Ural Mountains. We have the Western Siberian Plains. We have the Central Siberian Plateau, and we have the Kamchatka Peninsula that you see there all the way to the eastern side of the map. Each of these regions have very distinct physical features, and we want to go through each of these physical features and find out what makes these regions so special compared to the other regions. So the very first region we want to look at was number 1, the Northern European Plain. And there you go. The Northern European Plain, of course, lies once again in the westernmost part of Russia. And if we wanted to look, if we went to this area and we wanted to look at what it looks like, what's the visual image of what the Russian plains looks like? Here you see a picture. The Russian plains, of course, is very fertile soil, little rolling hills here and there, which you'll see in that picture. But this is where you're going to find most of your lush vegetation. This is where you're going to find most of your population of Russia, and this is probably the most livable area of Russia as well. Next, we want to talk about the Ural Mountains, and the Ural Mountains lies right here. Bam! And the Ural Mountains is a very, very important mountain range for a couple of reasons. First of all, it is a mountain range that is the most radiated mountain range in the world. And it is also the mountain range that actually divides Europe and Asia. This mountain range is not as large in terms of height as what you will see with the Himalayas. However, the mountain range has also gone through a long period of erosion. It's gone through millions of years, literally of constant erosion. And due to the erosion, you're going to find that there's a lot of gaps in between pieces of this mountain range. And because of these gaps, the mountain range actually does not, or have not, provided Russia that sort of proper natural barrier as what most mountains normally do for other ancient or current civilizations. You're going to find particular groups like the Mongols have managed to conquer the Russian civilization, and in order to do so, they specifically took advantage of those gaps by invading those particular gaps. Now, the next region that we want to take a look at is the Western Siberian Plains, and here you go. The Western Siberian Plains, now it does experience some incredibly harsh winters, some very bad winter conditions, and yet at the same time the landscape itself is fairly flat, and as you see there in the very background, it's got some distinct forestry that we're going to talk about in just a second. But the land is not only flat, in some areas it actually dips, and this, by the way, causes a great deal of marshes and some swampland to occur. There's a lot of rivers and lakes and ponds in this area, and so this region is a very wet region, and it gets wet because of the harsh winters. The harsh winters dumps a lot of snow in the area, leaves a lot of that water behind once the snow melts. Due to the depressions that are already available in the landscape, that water just sits there, and it sits there for all year, even during the warm periods of the year, and therefore that's how come you get some of your marshes and your swampy vegetation and grasslands. All right, next region we want to take a look at is the Central Siberian Plateau. Of course, this is a very high-rising area of high-rise area of Russia. You see a picture there. That's actually from a picture taken from a plane. This area is incredibly cold. This area has actually some of the harshest climate conditions that you can experience worldwide. This is actually an area that can get colder than Antarctica. There is actually one time of the year that this can get colder in Siberia. That is, it can get colder than Antarctica, and that's something that most people don't really realize. They think Antarctica is the coldest place in the world, and it is the coldest place year-round. However, it does not get colder in Antarctica than it does here in the Central Siberian Plateau. The Central Siberian Plateau does have the harshest conditions. The only place you can find more harsh of conditions as far as living is concerned is Antarctica, of course. Now, the next region we want to take a look at is the Kamchatka Peninsula. There we go. I was having some problems pronouncing that. This area, of course, lies right there on that ring of fire on the Pacific Plate. It's the largest tectonic plate in the world, and it's also by far the most active. And because of that, you see a lot of volcanoes in the Kamchatka Peninsula. In fact, this particular peninsula has over 100 volcanoes. I'm not exaggerating. It literally has over 100 volcanoes. And you see a picture right here of a fairly large-sized volcano with a lot of that sort of dried dried and cooled lava off to the sides. Very active area, and at the same time, it's actually a much more livable place than the Central Siberian Plateau. The climate conditions are a little bit better. They're a little bit more stable, and they're a little bit more like the Alaskan climate conditions that you can experience. So in other words, the summers can get up to 60 degree marks. Yes, your winters are going to be incredibly cold. And again, one key important physical feature about the Kamchatka Peninsula is its volcanoes, or